Thanks for joining us today at Champaign Motorsports. Today we will be putting in an Invidia Gemini R400 catback exhaust on this guy right here. We look forward to seeing how that project goes, and then if there's a slightly different sound than a stock STI. So we're excited, so let's get started. So to remove the mufflers, the two bolts are here, here, and then they have individual mounting brackets as well, or bushings rather. They slide off, but you have to go one way then the other. You have a little trouble with that. This car is very new, so they'll probably come off pretty easy, but if you have a little bit of trouble, some dish soap, lube it up real good, they'll slide right out for you. So we're going to continue with that. Now that you have the 2 million twist bolts out, you want to look at the top bushing, or the rear and the front, and you can see that you have to slide them in opposite directions to get them out. And these ones are not going to come out as easy as I expected. So we have some dish soap. Little dab, water usually helps. Just find a way to work that on. The rear one is usually easier to get off. The rear one is usually easier to get off first. It's a little bit shorter. And you can take off your 1,000,000-pound muffler. Other side, exact same process. All right, grab the tip. And we are off. Now we're going to move to this part, which is significantly longer on the factory exhaust than any aftermarket exhaust that I've seen so far. These are the only two bolts that you need to focus on removing from this side, and then there's a hanger way up front that we'll get to, or way in the back, close to where we were earlier, right after the suspension, or I guess technically right before if you're coming from the front of the car. So we will show that as I remove this last piece. Here we are removing the front bolts. These ones are a little bit easier as they have springs to preload some pressure, so you don't have to worry about that back nut too much. This top one's a little annoying. You want to be careful when you finally unbolt these, as the hanger in the back is only half undone. I do not like to fully undo it, as dangling will put too much pressure on the downpipe. You definitely don't want to risk bending or cracking any of the mounting parts over there. I use my leg a lot to support the weight. This exhaust has a new collector that has not been seen before, I do not believe. And then if you have undone the hanger, you can usually slide this whole part off at this point. And then we are mounting the mid-plate part first. I like to do the hanger here before I mount the middle section, so that I don't ever have to rely on the front part holding the weight. I always lube this stuff up really good. You always want to get a little in the hole as well. If you don't have soaps, saliva works really well. You want to make sure everything has a little bit of Here, I usually use my leg to support the lower part, but you can always use a jack or blocks or whatever it is. I'm pretty skinny, so I can fit under here pretty well, so I can maneuver. I like to use my leg, get the first bolt with the first gasket in here. You never want to tighten any of the exhaust bolts completely. You always want to just kind of get them bolted and then leave them nice and loose. This way you can work on getting the proper fitment so that the tips and everything look right where they want to go. So I have the 2 bolts in. I'm going to start the nuts just enough to hold the back end of this pipe up, and then we're going to move on to the front side. And again, I do this so that the front down pipe does not have to support any of the weight of this exhaust without this back hanger. So here we are. We have the 2 pieces connected, hanging from the back part, from the back hanger. This part's relatively easy, one of my easiest parts. You just slip it over the factory donut. If you have a factory exhaust, this car does. So we slip the exhaust over the factory donut if you have the factory downpipe. If not, you'll, it'll mount much more like 2 flat flanges. Here you have the donut. If the aftermarket exhaust allows the use of the factory spring hinges, I like to use those. This one does not, so we'll put the regular bolts. Because it's hanging, you can see that it is off alignment. You can use your foot to twist it if you're tall enough, and I am just barely tall enough to do that. So I am going to pre-put these bolts in. I also want to mention too, because we didn't mention earlier, we are putting Never Sees on all of these bolts. It's not a brand endorsement. This is stuff that I use right here. So we have one side on. We're putting the second side back on. It's a lot easier without the gigantic exhaust. So slipping them in is usually pretty easy. It's really nice having all the extra room.
Get down from that deck. What are you doing up there?
And then we slip the bolts here. Now everything is finger tight, not even. It's very loose so that we can adjust everything as needed. And we'll come back and we'll tighten up those bolts, get everything aligned, and we will see what the product looks like. So what we did is we went through, we tightened up all of our bolts. The initial tightening, the exhaust lined up pretty good, so there was absolutely no adjustment. Most of the time you'll have a little bit of adjustment that you need to do, but we got very lucky. It's a good high quality exhaust and everything's engineered well, so we'll kind of pass the camera here so I can give you a good look at what it looks like. See it starting, gets rid of the big collector, it still has a little bit of a spring area for some vibrations, resonator, nice big 3-inch pipe, splits, and oh man, so much more room under here with the much tinier exhausts. Come back. Got your Invidia plate and big 4-inch, or big tips, probably 4-inch, that just look so beautiful from the side. So that was the install, removal and install, as you can see. Project went fairly smooth. And as you can see, don't be afraid of doing stuff like this. You can do it without lifts. You can do it in your backyard. You can do it without power tools. We just showed it to you. Obviously, it's a lot easier if you have a friend to help. But like I said, we're right here in my backyard. You can hear the traffic, people yelling at kids. If you like the video, subscribe. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff for this Type-RA, hopefully a bunch of world firsts. And then I'll unlock hopefully we'll get a dyno run on my other tuner car, which I've put a lot more time and money into so far. So stay tuned for that. That should be a really fun dyno video and a good history on that one as well.